Hey everyone, welcome to the weirdest news in history, or Weirder News Wednesday, with me, your host Ben Chasteen, where you'll hear strange news pieces from any time period. And tonight I'll be talking about number 5, an illegal drama that's more fitting for a medieval fantasy than modern Iowa. A man from Kansas decided the court system was too mundane. What did he do? A legal battle. He wanted to settle his disputes with his ex-wife in a classical trial by combat, physical battle in the courtroom. Number 4, an art collective nabbed an Andy Warhol original for a cool $20,000 and is now dishing it out to one lucky art enthusiast for only $250. The catch? Well, the masterpiece is among 999 crafty imitations that not even the forgers themselves know which one is real. And number 3, in May 2008, Brandon Swanson was driving back to his parents' place after his spring break when he had a small accident. He reached out to his folks for a rescue, then poof, he suddenly vanished without a trace. Hear the story about what happened here. And number 2, imagine having a political rivalry so intense that in 1804, Aaron Burr, the vice president at the time, and Alexander Hamilton decided to have a duel leading to the death of one of them. And number 1, Charlotte Holmes from Kansas had a near-death experience where her heart stopped for 11 minutes. She describes her journey to heaven where she met her family and then went to a less pleasant place. She returned with a warning for others to consider their actions. You're going to hear her story here. So with that, I'll see you guys out on the edge. Hey everyone, I hope you're having a great Wednesday. By the way, we're having some issues with our email, so we couldn't send an email out for this. So if you're here, thank you for being here. I guess this will be on the website and everything. And hope you guys are having a great one. What a week! Very intense week. You know, honestly, I am just so glad now that the elections are over. I'm so tired of hearing the ads and everything. Oh, I'm just like, okay, finally breathe. So, yeah, pretty intense. But, you know, it's like, I don't, I guess, my whole thinking through this was just, it's all in God's hands. So that's what was kind of getting me through everything. And, yeah, definitely felt a little lighter this morning. So we'll see what happens with everything. I mean, I'm pretty optimistic about it.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Yeah, see, even my phone doesn't even know what the heck is going on. That was weird. I updated my phone and it's been weird today. So, all right. Are we okay? Yeah, okay. You guys can see me. Great. Okay. Thought we might be having some issues. So, all right, let's jump into this with number 5. Man requests sword fight with ex-wife and her lawyer to settle a legal dispute. So, literally an illegal drama that's more fitting for something like Game of Thrones, because the man decided the court system was too mundane. Instead of a legal battle in court with his wife, he wanted to have a physical battle in the courtroom and a classical trial by combat with real samurai swords. Think you're having issues with your ex? Imagine what this woman is dealing with. So David Ostrom of 40 of Kansas, and in a court filing that January 3rd court filing that his former wife Bridget Ostrom, 38 of Iowa, and her attorney Matthew Hudson had destroyed him legally. That's what he said. He said they destroyed him legally, and he proposed to the judge asking for a 12-week prep time to get his hands on some authentic Japanese swords. Ostrom argued that his ancient method of dispute resolution wasn't explicitly outlawed in the US, so why not give it a try? So the order came after both parties met for a hearing on the issue where his wife testified against her ex-husband's battle request. She said, quote, clearly threatened bodily harm and pushed her into taking some action. Bridget subsequently asked the judge to suspend her husband's visitation rights in order for him to undergo psychiatric evaluation, which is probably what he needs. The judge granted her request. Since filing a motion by trial by combat, Ostrom has not seen his children and has only spoken with them over the phone once. Clearly he's got some issues. There's a photo of this guy in one of these articles. I'm not sure which one it is. But so what happened was this story completely blew up in the media. His name was published in the Washington Post. He was featured on Fox News, and even different comedians took jabs at him and whatnot. So that's him right there. So very crazy. I mean, clearly this dude's not going to have a trial by combat with his ex-wife in a courtroom where he's going to, I guess his lawyer would represent her, and then they would just battle out with samurai swords. So clearly it's not going to happen. But and the judge ordered for him to actually undergo a psychiatric evaluation. So
you have to be pretty confident in your samurai skills, I think, to challenge your ex-wife's lawyer to a trial by combat.
I that's just weird. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I can't even imagine that. That's just insane. And those like the real swords are so incredibly sharp. I just can't even imagine that. Like, that's just insane. So anyway, yeah, welcome to our world. All right, number 4 here. 1,000 Warhol artworks are for sale for $250 each. But the catch, only one of them is real. So for $250, you could land yourself an original Andy Warhol sketch. But it may be forgery, and no one, not even the art collective who purchased the original one for $20,000, has any idea which one is real. So New York's Mischief Group, it's MSCHF, which is a collaboration of about 20 different artists, bought a certified 1954 Warhol pen drawing titled Fairies, and they used a robotic arm to recreate the artist's exact strokes. And then they were like using heat and light and humidity to like kind of age the paper to make it exactly like the original. And they dubbed this whole thing Museum of Forgeries. So they created 99 fakes, tossed in the real one, mixed them all up. So no one had any idea which one was real and which one was fake. And then they listed them on auction for $250 a piece, $250. I mean, really, it's kind of, in some aspects, it's kind of genius, because if they sold them all, they would literally make over $200,000 in profit. I mean, that's kind of crazy, actually. And then it's like, someone may have the real one, someone may not. They said, they're not saying that these are real. They're not they're not saying that they're just saying you could get a real one for $250. This is the question. Are they allowed to do this? And technically they can, since they're not saying that you're buying an original copy or original piece of one. Also, they said that's kind of like a satire on the entire art industry itself. Mischief said that they are more like poking fun at the industry, more interested in the authenticity of an artwork than who created it, or rather than the art itself. This is what their chief creative officer said. But this is what's weird. Mischief is no stranger to controversy. Remember the weird Satan sneakers that actually had real human blood, and rapper Lil Nas X was promoting them at the time, and they had Nike's logo on it. So it was a big uproar because everyone was like, dude, why would Nike create these like satanic shoes And we even featured it on Edge of Wonder at the time. We were talking about them. Well, Nike ended up suing them for copyright infringement. And Daniel Greenberg, who was like one of their executives, he literally said it was a PR stunt come true. This is what he said. Quote, there are two things I said at the time that I'll never forget. One was, I hope Nike sues us. And the other was, this is 10,000% legal. And man, did they make my wish come true. Because the fact that Nike sued them pushed them into the mainstream even more. And then everybody started talking about it. And then, like, there were certain people that really wanted to buy these shoes. The two parties eventually reached a settlement over the whole thing. Doesn't say how much how much the settlement was for. But they saw this more as like a PR stunt and looked at like, oh, if we have to pay the settlement, it's kind of like we would just pay the same amount and for like our marketing campaign and probably not even get the same result. So we'll just have Nike sue us. We'll just pay them for that. And then we'll have like, massive publicity through this whole thing that you can't even purchase. So they also sold a laptop a couple years ago with some of the world's most dangerous viruses on it for $1.3 million. So this group is a little bit weird. So especially with the Satan shoes. I just can't even, and it's like with real blood in the shoes. But anyway, it's super weird, right? So I don't know. I just remember when those came out, we were all really confused. It was like, is like really Nike is behind this? And then, I don't even think people really knew that Nike wasn't behind it, but I don't know. I'm surprised they settled it behind closed doors, honestly. It's kind of weird, but very strange stuff, right? So much better things to spend your money on too, but hey, someone purchased a banana duct tape to the wall for $1.3 million or something like that. So there you go, All right. Yeah. I mean, it was like the second round of it, but you weren't even getting what was it? Were you getting a banana or you were getting a banana and duct tape was what you were getting and the authenticity card, So, I mean, in essence, this is literally at the pinnacle of what they were making fun of by doing this whole thing with the Andy Warhol thing. So it's like, people don't care about the art anymore. They just want it to be legit. And that's just weird. So, all right, number 3, the mysterious disappearance of Minnesota college student Brandon Swanson. So, in May of 2008, Brandon Swanson was on his way home from celebrating the end of the spring semester when he crashed his car into a ditch outside of a small town in Minnesota called Lind. Unhurt and not really that serious of a crash, he stayed on the phone with his parents as they were on their way to pick him up. So, Brandon, now on foot, he decided to leave his car and walk on foot down the road, and he saw some lights from like what he thought was a town up ahead. And so he decided to save time because he was like, okay, if I keep going, there's a shorter way if I just cut through through a field and I can get over there. And so he decided to save time by hopping over a fence and walking through these fields. He was still on the phone with his dad. His father stayed on the phone with him for about 47 minutes as his father was driving in the area looking for him. His father told him that he got to where he said he was and he began flashing his headlights, but Brandon said he still didn't see him on the phone. Suddenly, his father hears Brandon say, "Oh crap," and then was never seen or heard from again, as if literally he just vanished right then and there. His father spent all night looking for him, but with no avail. They finally went to the police in the morning, but the police said he was probably at his friend's house or just passed out drunk somewhere and wait till midday, and then they'll figure it out. However, when they reviewed his phone records, it actually showed him in a town called Porter, which was about 25 miles away from Lent, where he said he was, in a completely different direction. So, as the hours went by, soon everyone in the area began searching for Brandon. Police concentrated their search efforts on the area around Porter, and soon they found his car between Lent and a town called Tauntaun. A massive search underwent involving dogs, helicopters, airplanes, volunteers. Everybody was out looking for him. The dogs found a scent before it just stopped as they approached the Yellow Medicine River. So the dogs were on the scent. And all of a sudden, they just lost the scent as they got closer to the river. No items were found on the way to the river, which is a good 6-hour walk. So it's really not enough time for him from the time of the wreck to him walking and then disappearing. Now, over a 3-week period, search and rescue efforts continued on with cadaver dogs trying to even find him, turning up nothing. Brandon had simply vanished into the rural farmland, or I mean, they were wondering if he just completely vanished into the rural farmland and backroads of Minnesota. So that was their main thinking. It was like, okay, maybe he got lost somewhere, or maybe he got cold. So they expanded the search efforts, including the Yellow Medicine River in Minnesota, but there was still no trace of Brandon was ever found. They said foul play hasn't completely been ruled out, but they're all at a complete loss because his body was never found. So they thought, so they said that he might have fallen into the river, either drowned or swam to the riverbank and then died of hypothermia, but no body was ever found. So the other aspect was maybe he was walking, and then that's why he was like, oh shit, because he just like fell off and then like landed in the river. And they said the river was pretty high and it was very, very fast. So it is possible that happened. However, it's a little bit unclear about the phone because, did the phone, I couldn't really find answers for this. Did the phone just automatically hang up? Did was his father still on the line? And I couldn't really find the answer to that. Brandon's mother thought it was unlikely that he drowned. He said that they said that the 3 to 6 mile long trail also led to the river, where initially the dog jumped into, so a dog that was searching for him jumped into the river and then jumped back out and continued along another gravel trail until it eventually lost Brandon's scent. So some thought, maybe he jumped in and then jumped out and died of hyperthermia. But again, there was no body. So that also doesn't make much sense. Then they thought, well, he was drinking, he was out with friends, but his friends said that he wasn't really that drunk, or he only had like a single drink and then he left. So they were like, he was pretty sober. And his dad said, he was talking to him for 47 minutes and he seemed completely fine. Then someone thought, well, maybe a wild animal might have got him, but then there was no evidence of his clothing ever found or even like shredded or anything. So soon, like weeks turned into months and even a couple years, and the search continued. Now, some local farmers forbade people to search their fields because they didn't want people to damage their crops as they were looking. So it kind of hindered some search efforts. One theory, something that I kind of even thought of was maybe that, since he was jumping over these fences and running through this field, maybe a farmer thought he was like up to no good or something and could have possibly accidentally shot him and then like hid the body. That's one thing I've thought of. But and then if they can't search the area or that person's farmland, that would explain one aspect if that's happened. Another is like people thought, well, maybe he was abducted because he did see lights ahead of him. That's what was kind of weird about it. So some people thought, well, maybe he was abducted like by another car, like the lights turned out to be a car, but then you would see a car pull up. I mean, this is in the middle of nowhere, at night. And so it would be impossible for a car just appear out of nowhere and then just like someone come out and grab him while he's on the phone talking with his dad. So that was ruled out too. The other, which, I kind of thought of more so than anything else, possibly alien abduction. I mean, maybe the lights he saw was like from a craft instead of a town, and he was in the wrong place too. So I mean, that's just another theory that's out there, I guess. But the problem is that the reports don't mention if, yeah, again, if the phone immediately cut out or not, or if it fell or whatever. I mean, so it's just kind of weird to find this evidence about it exactly. Um, so, and then the aftermath of all this, his mother did get a bill passed called Brandon's Law, which was passed in Minnesota. So it requires law enforcement to take missing person cases way more seriously. Because after what happened, they didn't take it seriously. They're like, "Oh yeah, he's younger. It's like spring break. He's probably just like out partying or whatever. Even though he got in a wreck, like maybe he just was drunk and fell asleep somewhere." So, after all this time, they still have no idea what happened to him. In 2021, the Yellow Medicine River dried up due to a massive drought in the area. So, for the first time ever, law enforcement were able to really go through that area of the river that they normally couldn't, and they dug up and everything. Still, no body was found. Nothing turned up. No clothing item. Nothing. So, and his phone was never recovered, actually. That's what's weird about this, too. Wherever he is, and his car keys, so his phone, car keys, or any piece of clothing, nothing ever turned up. So his parents still remain diligent, though, and continued to, not give up hope of finding their son. And even to this day, they say they leave their front porch light on, praying that Brandon will eventually come home. So, pretty insane story. And yeah, what do you guys think? I don't know. There was a lot of theories online too, on forums and stuff that people were saying, and yeah, no one really has any idea though. So yeah, I mean, Dryad was like, I mean, is like a portal. I mean, that could be another thing. Maybe some strange portal just opened up and it just like, he walked right through it. I mean, that's a very strong possibility too. Maybe some like strange cryptid creature grabbed him too. But it's just, yeah, it's weird that there's no, they haven't really found any, like the dogs can't really find a scent or they lose it. And you know it's very strange stuff. Very, very strange stuff. Yeah, the phone, they were trying to ping the phone, but what happened was they did have the report of the phone of where it was last located. After that, it was like it just, like, I guess it just disappeared. They couldn't find the phone after that. I mean, it's kind of like when your cell phone dies, even like your smartphone. You can still find your phone, but if it dies, it only shows the last location of where your phone is. So you would think they would have some knowledge about that, though. But this is like 2008, I guess. So I don't know if things are that sophisticated, but a ping should work. So using the satellites or the cell towers. So I don't know. There was a little bit of holes in this. Like I said, it was unclear whether what happened when his father was on it. Did it just hang up immediately? Did he, like, it was like, hello, hello, I can hear you, sounds. And I couldn't really find the answer to that question. So yeah, or a spaceship. All right, let's move on to number 2 here. The strangest election, well, kind of election, but a strangest election in American history resulted in a deadly duel. If only all elections were done this way, have just people duel it out. The winner takes the presidency. I'll say one thing though, probably not many people would run, or only very serious people would run if it was actually done this way. It would definitely weed out the ones that were just clearly in it for power. Can't imagine that actually happening today, but that would be pretty interesting. Can you imagine like how many people would watch that though? Oh man. Well, anyway, Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr were bitter rivalries, and Hamilton was more principled and believed in tradition, and actually had a more ideological way of thinking over Burr. Burr was more of like an opportunist who basically would align his thinking with whatever would grant him more support, power, and money. Yeah, so you can take your pick of who that represents today. Hamilton saw right through this, and Burr defeated Hamilton's father-in-law in the U.S. Senate in 1791. Now, as a result, Hamilton, Hamilton was a Federalist, Burr was actually a Republican. And back then, things were a little different. But anyway, as a result, Hamilton, even though he didn't agree with everything Thomas Jefferson said, convinced his fellow Federalists to vote for Jefferson instead of Burr. This really angered Burr. Jefferson defeated Burr by a huge, massive margin. I mean, how many people really know Aaron Burr, the name? If you ask, your average American. Burr became vice president, because back then, if you are running for the presidency, whoever lost automatically became the vice president. But he was dumped from being on the ticket in 1804, and then he tried to run from governor of New York. Burr demanded Hamilton owe him an apology, a public apology, and began writing angry letters to Hamilton, which eventually led him to challenge Hamilton to a duel. So, Hamilton agreed. And during the gunfight, Burr ended up shooting Hamilton in the stomach, who died about 36 hours later. Hamilton shot back and missed. Now, there is a lot of debate on what actually took place because no one else was there to see it. Some say that Hamilton missed on purpose as to preserve his honor, or even maybe as an act of martyrdom. There is proof to this. He was getting older and his career was beginning to fade. He also just lost his son Philip, and he was having a hard time coping. He also wrote a goodbye letter to his wife Eliza. Then he wrote a statement against. Then a statement he wrote against duels was published after his death. And in this message, Hamilton explained that he would not fire on Burr. Now, there are others believe that Burr cheated and fired on Hamilton before they even officially started the duel. So this is why there's some controversy with this. Either way, though, Burr thought he would get a hero's welcome for winning the duel. Instead, he got a murder charge and was forced to flee to the South. So this is interesting because it says that he met up with a very powerful friend, although I could not figure out who his friend was. And not only was his friend able to revoke the charges against him, but he even brought him back to Washington to finish his term as vice president. Kind of weird. Then in 1907, he faced treason charges for conspiring to plan the succession of several Western states. He then was forced to flee to Europe, then returning to New York after his acquittal. His professional and personal life remained tattered until his death in 1836. He has pretty much been largely forgotten in history, aside from he was pretty much only known now as the man who killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel. Hamilton also had a massive amount of unpublished papers that he had collected and wrote. And after his death, these became very famous works of art for the future of America, or not works of art, but famous literature for the future of America. As for Burr, because he was in Europe, he had all his writings sent on a ship to come over to America in 1813, and the ship ran aground and he lost everything. So Burr had nothing left except for, I guess there was like 2 small volumes that he had written, and I guess you can find those, but everything else has been largely forgotten in history, including even who he is. So it's crazy. And Burr could, I seriously think there's some deep things going on with Burr here. You know, he had, I mean, if it's saying he had some very powerful friends, I'm like, where, like, you know, I mean, instantly my thinking goes into like, yeah, you know, kind of like probably precursor to the Freemasons at the time or Illuminati or some craziness like that. So it's very strange. So Yak with You said, moral of the story, just do a debate. That is, if we have a real one ever. I don't know. I feel like the last few debates have just been, yeah, don't even get me started. I just want a fair and simple election. That's it. And, you know, I mean, for good or for ill, people have spoken out now. So, you know, anyway, I just think it's pretty interesting that it shows they can't control elections, which I wasn't sure what was going to happen this time around, but very interesting stuff to say the least. All right, number one here. Missouri woman dies, goes to heaven, and comes back with mission to bring home as many as we can. That's a quote. Bring home as many people as we can. It's just the people's. Okay. Anyway, Charlotte Holmes was having a routine checkup when suddenly her blood pressure suddenly went through the roof, which left the doctors speechless. She was having a heart attack or a stroke. They still weren't really quite sure what she was having. Her husband, Danny, watched helplessly as they tried to stabilize her. She was still conscious and told her husband that she was seeing and smelling flowers along with hearing music. Danny looked around and noticed there wasn't any. That's when he said, quote, that's when I knew she was not in this world. So Charlotte's heart stopped for 11 minutes and she was pronounced dead, literally by the doctors, although they still were trying to resuscitate her. Charlotte said at this time she was looking down on her body and watching them trying to revive her. And there, Lindsay, can we play this little this clip here that I have saved?
I could see Danny standing in the corner. He had backed up. I could see them, all the nurses around. Then I opened my eyes. I looked around at the beauty. I could see the trees. I could see the grass. And everything was swaying with the music because everything in heaven worships God. I can't convey to you what heaven looked like because it's so above what we could even imagine, a million times.
Charlotte says she was led into heaven by angels.
There's no fear. It's like pure joy. When the angels takes over, there's no fear. When you're going home, it's pure joy.
She says she then began to recognize deceased family members.
I seen my mom. I seen my dad. I seen my sister. I seen family members standing behind. I seen saints of old. See, they didn't look old. They didn't look sick. None of them wore glasses. They looked like they were in their 30s. But yet it says in the scriptures, we will be known as we were known. I knew them there in their new body. They looked wonderful.
What Charlotte saw after that, however, shocked her.
Standing behind my mom and dad was a light so bright. I couldn't look upon it. I mean, it was so bright. But I knew it was my Heavenly Father. I seen a toddler. And that toddler,
Crazy.
I couldn't understand. And I can remember thinking, who is this? And I heard my father say to me, my Heavenly Father say to me, it's your child. I lost that child. I was 5.5 months pregnant. I can remember them holding the baby up and saying, Charlotte, it's a boy. Then he was gone.
You can pause it here, Lindsay, and then next one it would be like 346. So then Charlotte said at this point God kind of brought her back. But then all of a sudden they went to a very dark place, and she was describing hell essentially.
God took me to the edge of hell. And I looked down, and the smell, and then rotten flesh. That's what it smelled like, and screams. After seeing the beauty of heaven, the contrast to seeing hell is almost unbearable. And he says, I show you this to tell you, if some of them do not change their ways, this is where they shall reside. I heard my father say, you have time to go back and share.
As quickly as she had gone to heaven, Charlotte's spirit came back.
I felt myself being...
Okay, you can stop it here. So so at this point, she says, after she experienced all this, she began to slowly wake up in her body, but she described like feeling all the pain that was going through her body. And she slowly started to blink her eyes. And her husband said that's the moment where he knew she was going to be okay. So at the end of this video, it's a really amazing video. She says that she just wants to give people hope and to let people know that everything is okay and that heaven is real without any doubt in her mind. She really was like, heaven is real. And I want people to know that and give people hope. So it's such a really amazing story. And, I'm always really fascinated by these near-death experiences because I think these are very real experiences that people are having, and it helps to understand like there's so much going on outside of this world. We're always like worried about what's happening here, and then it's like, yeah, there's just such a beautiful place, and it's like we just forget that because we're just caught in the day-to-day mundane things in this world. And I think overall it's the emotional aspect that a lot of people are, if you're still listening to the mainstream media and still trust the mainstream media, there's a lot of emotional aspect in that the mainstream media really plays on. And I've always said, like, my thing is, like, I think the mainstream media is our biggest enemy. Doesn't matter who's sitting in as a president or leader of the world or the country or whatever, it's the media that's really have been lying and deceiving people for so long. So, once people start waking up to that, then, this becomes a lot more relevant than the with God and the divineness and everything else, because people realize, like, hey, I don't need to give into this fear. I think the media is really, really focused on the fear aspect. I mean, I think ever since COVID, it's just the fear has been pushed on people for so long, for so many years since this all started. And I think people are finally, like, pushing it away. And instead of giving into the fear, they're finding their faith. And I think that's the most important aspect through all of this. And, and I think that a lot of what's happened over the last 4 years has really been helping people realize that why faith is so strong. And, and I think there's a lot of people that turn to either religion or spirituality over the last few years that weren't necessarily spiritual or religious people, and they've kind of turned more towards that way because of everything that's happened. And I kind of see this as a positive thing. So, so that's what I would just say to people right now, like, don't give up your faith, don't stop, keep it going. And I think, love and God will always prevail over evil every single time. So I don't know what the future is going to have for everybody, but, that's all we can do, and just give it all to God. So hopefully things will work out. But anyway,
Take it into your own hands with a samurai sword.
Or you could do that too. Yeah. And honestly, I mean, I won't lie. That thought has crossed my mind 1 or 2 times. Like, just take a sword and just run into battle. And yeah, but no, I'm not going to do that. Couldn't do that. I don't expect anyone else to do that out there either. But I'm not gonna lie, it has crossed my mind a couple times. it's like, man, what is going on? But I think things will, or a lightsaber, that would be better. Yeah. But I'm hopeful for the future, and yeah, we'll see what happens with everything. Like I said, all we can do is have faith and not give into the hate, into the fear. That's the most important aspect of it. And I think a lot of people are waking up, and that's been arranged in history. I mean, there's been all kinds of things throughout history and all kinds of prophecies saying that, this, like, during a certain period of history, a lot of people are going to start waking up, and that's what's been happening. And it's been really amazing to see that. So we'll see what happens over the next couple months. So, well, everyone, thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. I hope you like this episode. Let me know which one you like the best, and we'll see you for our Friday Night Live on Friday. So thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. No, not weekend yet. Coming up. So, and I'll see you Friday. All right, everyone. See you out on the edge. Take care.